Ready to roll?
Yes, sir. We're rolling.
Can I get another? One more. No? Okay. Hey guys, it's Cam with Craft and Tailored. In this episode of What Is On My Wrist, we're talking about the Patek Philippe Aquanaut. That's right, this is a 5066A. Really excited to share this with you because we've reviewed a bunch of Nautilus before, but we haven't done an Aquanaut. And so we got a really nice example of an Aquanaut. It's an earlier reference. It's not the earliest reference, but it's an early example. This one is full kit, comes with its box and its papers. And I think it's an interesting watch from the perspective of the collector market is looking at the smaller watches, smaller in terms of case size examples of some of the icons like the 3800 series and the Patek Philippe Nautilus, the 4100 series of Audemars Piguet Royal Oaks. And so we had this really awesome 5066A come in the Nautilus range, and I figured it'd be a good time to talk about, did I say Nautilus? I meant to say Aquanaut. I hope you can get this together, Pete. Wow, my eyes watering. It's the end of the day.
I always do, right?
You always do. You always hit. Pete only hits homers, baby. No base hits out of Pete. Just fucking straight homers, like pointing to the sky. Just leave a comment for Pete. Pete is the magic maker. So, all right, interesting watch from the perspective of if you look at it, it's kind of Nautilus-esque. Some people call it the baby brother to the Nautilus, even though it's an Aquanaut. They're two separate watches. To me, I kind of get a Nautilus vibe and feel, but not really. You know, from a design perspective, you kind of have this geometric case, but the cool thing is that it came originally on these like rubber straps. There's crown guards that protect the crown. The dial is different. And for me, all of the Aquanauts feel much more sporty to me than they do a dress watch that is also in steel, kind of as like the sport being the afterthought. I feel like being a sports watch was really something that was at the forefront of the thought and the design when Patek released the Aquanaut in 1997. I think the other thing that was interesting too is if we peel back the layers of history, you know, in the later part of the 90s into the 2000s, we had this thing called the .com boom. I know that there's some of you probably watching this video and they're like, what do you mean the .com boom? There was a time and a place before the internet, all right? I remember the internet used to come on this like disc and AOL, you would put it into your machine, then you had to get a modem and it'd be like, but basically what happened is anybody that created like a .com business, there was like this .com bubble, and basically it allowed everybody to do business in a much more modern, you know what the internet is, right? If you need to know what the .com boom was, just Wikipedia that shit. Like, I mean, there's probably people watching this video that didn't know what like the world was like without internet. The reason why I bring up the internet and that kind of .com boom is there was basically a new generation of like nouveau riche type of watch collectors, and some of the traditional designs weren't appealing to them. Patek or whatever, I call it both Patek or Patek, depending on how much coffee I've had for the day. They wanted to introduce a watch that was definitely much more sporty and was elegant but more ruggedized than say like a Nautilus. It was a watch that was definitely much more sports focused, has crown guards, you know, larger locking screw down crown, and although you can get an Aquanaut on a metal bracelet, most commonly they were on this rubber strap. So that was kind of the thought process behind Patek in that era, is they wanted to create a watch that kind of catered to this younger, kind of more active type of buyer, and that was that .com era of nouveau riche, so to speak. So Patek Philippe introduced the Aquanaut 5060A in 1997, and then later the 5066A came into production. Pretty similar. We won't go into like splitting the hairs, but essentially the case size was 35.6 millimeters. And it kind of had like a little bit more of a streamlined case. It had more of kind of that traditional lug shape, as you can see, crown guards, larger winding crown, and it came on this tropic strap inspired strap. It's basically a Patek version of a Tropic strap. It was like their version of a rubber strap. And the strap was supposed to be resistant against, ultraviolet light and salt water. And again, this was a watch that was ultimately marketed and kind of geared towards somebody that wanted a nice wristwatch while still maintaining an active lifestyle. The other thing too is that the dial changed a little bit. We kind of have like this grenade or kind of like square motif on the dial, which then also kind of made its way into the strap. The other thing that was more sporty is that we've got kind of a hybrid dial, meaning that it has this luminous material, and then we also have the Arabic numerals that kind of surround the outer track of the luminous plots on the dial, and then also big, wide, luminous hands for increased visibility. So we talked a little bit about the 5060, which is the first version of the Aquanaut, and the watch that we're actually showcasing is a 5066. Basically, they're identical watches. The only difference is that the 5066 has an exhibition case back, which shows the 330 SC caliber movement, which is kind of cool. So instead of having that solid steel case back, we have an exhibition case back, which I think is kind of like where a lot of watchmakers were going in the late 1990s and early 2000s. The houses were wanting to show off their finishing work and their movements, and rightfully so. I think that the movement is actually beautiful. We've got a big gold rotor, we've got some nice finishing on the movement itself, and it's kind of cool that you can actually see everything kind of moving in the watch, which I think is another maker's mark for quality and prestige. But basically, both the 5060A Aquanaut as well as the 5066, they both leverage the 330 SC movement, and both of the Aquanauts in this range have the center sweep seconds hand, which I think is kind of a nice touch. It's a white sweep seconds hand. It's really interesting and kind of a nice touch to the watch. So this specific 5066A is complete. So we have our original sales manual, and this one is from the year 2000. So it's still vintage. It's now, 22 years old. And one of the things that I wanna just kind of draw attention to is on most of the early Aquanauts, you're gonna see a tritium application at the dial in the 90s into the early thousands. And this tritium has a tendency to take on like this really nice warm coloration. Obviously, like this is the original sales brochure for the Aquanaut. So we've got like the 5066Js and the 5064A, and then the little tiny 4960. But the luminous material originally was like this bright white color, and it has a tendency to take on like a nice golden patina, which is really cool. This specific example, and this is kind of cool too. So here you can see that obviously it was offered and kind of marketed being a sports watch on, the rubber bracelet, but it also did come on, a steel bracelet as well. Kind of an interesting, almost like oyster-like bracelet, but in a very Patek Philippe kind of way. So this specific example is from the year 2000. It includes its original box and papers, instruction booklet. Here's the original origin certificate, which is cool. So there's that, and then it's pretty cool. It comes with kind of just like all these like little books and documents and things like that. Like I think this was like a little Patek catalog. Here's the instruction booklet on how to operate, the clasp, which is really cool. This deployment clasp is also really nice. It's basically, you've got this, this Patek logo here, and then it kind of just snaps into place. And the strap is really easily adjustable. So kind of an innovative design for the Aquanaut, being that they came on the strap, but there was still a lot of like engineering and kind of ingenuity, I guess, with this guys. It comes with its original box. Box is really cool. Kind of similar to that like block or kind of grenade-like motif that is in the dial and in the strap. And then one really interesting thing is that the boxes, whoever was making the boxes for, Patek and Omega and Rolex, there must have been one box maker that everybody was using in Switzerland, but they used this like weird material that was like this lacquer covered foam that just has a tendency to like kind of come apart. So not that you would store your watch in this box. It's kind of nice that it's a full complete set, but it's very common to see the boxes kind of start to disintegrate on the inside, whether it be Rolex or Omega in that era and time. So in any case, Talk a little bit about like the tech specs. Obviously, we talked about the watch being that it's 35.6. It doesn't wear small to me on the wrist. It's quite a thin watch, so I think it wears kind of nice and appropriate. It doesn't feel small on the wrist, and I don't really think it looks small. Whether it's a 50-60 or a 50-66, they're basically gonna be the same size. There's no real difference in their size. The only difference, again, is the exhibition case back. They both leverage a 330 caliber, 330 SC to be more specific, but wears really nice on the wrist. I actually prefer this watch on the Tropic strap or the rubber strap. You can also get these straps from factory in a bunch of different colors. Like there was a phenomenon where people were freaking out over the green strap and adding that to the watch, and the straps were selling for like $2,000, and it's like a rubber strap that you cut, and like, I get it. I'm a fanatic, you're a fanatic, we're all fanatics, but I just think this looks nice on this kind of like black rubber strap. So what else can I tell you? I like the deployant clasp. It's really, really nice and kind of ergonomic. Not in the sense that it's easy or hard to take off. I just kind of like the way that it functions. You kind of have like this like butterfly clasp, but it's like really simple and kind of nice and easy to use, if that makes sense. So I'll provide a link in the description above and below so that you guys can check out this example and learn more about the Aquanaut. And if you guys have watch questions, we are here and happy to help. You guys have actually sent us a lot of watch questions, which is really, really awesome. We've met a bunch of really great people that have just reached out, I think, from our YouTube videos and that kind of stuff. So if you've got watch questions, here and happy to help. Drop us a line at info@craftandtailored.com. Be sure to, of course, like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to check us out on Instagram, we're @craftandtailored. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We will see you in the next one. Baby. It up.